Hello, hello, hello. Everybody doing all right? Good. Hey, real quick before I start, a lot of you asked me, I read from a book last week, and you were asking me who the author and the title of that book was. The book is called Buck Naked Faith. Buck Naked Faith. And it's by Dr. Eric Sandras. Sandras. It is a great book. I don't know if it's still in print, but if you can find it, it is worth reading for sure. Now, I always like to ask dumb questions. Who likes Starbucks? Wow, I thought there would be more, but Starbucks is the sweet nectar of life for me. Usually I have a grande bold coffee each morning. I know that's bad. I could have probably bought 3 houses if I just cut out my grande bold coffee. But I learned a lot about Starbucks. I was reading a book, and it's talking about the founder, the guy who started. His name is Howard Schultz. Not a lot of people know Howard. You'll see a picture of Howard. He's a fairly good-looking man. But he's the guy. He's the king dog of Starbucks. When he started Starbucks, he modeled it after these small coffee shops in Italy. Just small espresso bars, little tiny coffee shops, neighborhood coffee shops, and he wanted to take that model and he wanted to bring it to the States. He wanted a place where people could hang out, they could learn about coffee, where people could interact with baristas who were passionate about coffee, who knew about coffee, who could recommend it. Friendships would grow. That's what he wanted. And so he brought Starbucks here, and he did that. In 1994, there's less than 400 Starbucks, if you can imagine that, in the United States. Just to give you an idea, when I lived in Chicago, within a 2-mile square radius of where I lived, there were over 100 Starbucks. You could sit on the stairs of one Starbucks and see another one right down the street. Okay? There were so many. 1994, he only had 400. And his goal was to create these small little coffee shops, neighborhood coffee shops, and he did that. He did it very well. And then in 1994, he sat in a high-level executive meeting with some of his other guys, and he said, how do we become invulnerable? What that means is, how do we become the top? How do we become so big that nobody can even compete with us? How do we do this? I want to know how we do this. And they said, well, Howard, this is what we do. We set a goal. By 2000, that's 6 years, by the year 2000, we want to have 2,000 coffee shops. We want to have 2,000 of these little kind of small coffee shops in the U.S. The year 2000 came, and they had 3,500. They quintupled. Okay, if you're in business and your business quintuples, that sounds funny, but that's really, really freaking good. That's a lot of money. And so they had 3,500 in 2000. 7 years later, in 2007, they had over 13,000 stores in the United States. And so he had become this empire. But listen, and don't miss this, because in the process of doing that, he gave up his vision. He gave up his dream. He gave up the talk that he talked. He wanted small, little, tiny coffee shops and neighborhood coffee shops. And instead, he got this cookie-cutter chain that has just invaded the world. This is what he said in 2007. He was writing a memo to his executives, and one of them, probably for a good, lucrative book deal, leaked this to the media. He said, over the past 10 years, in order to achieve growth, development, and scale necessary to go from less than 1,000 stores to 13,000 stores and beyond, we had to make a series of decisions that, in retrospect, have led to the watering down of the Starbucks experience. In the beginning, he wrote, was romance and theater, when customers could look over the counter and watch the baristas making their drinks by hand on the old-fashioned La Marzocco espresso machines. The customers could chat with baristas and cultivate friendships with them. However, for the sake of growth, Starbucks has needed to speed up the process. So Schultz approved newer, taller machines that blocked the sight lines between customers and baristas, eliminating Schultz's cherished romance and theater. Those are the machines they have now. You can't see what they're making. Those are the taller machines that they have in there now. In the beginning, Schultz wrote the Starbucks employees scooped coffee beans out of bins and ground them fresh in front of the customers, which added to the sense of theater that filled the air with that marvelous aroma, and it is marvelous. This practice was ended too in Starbucks' quest for growth, so that these marvelous aromas no longer pervaded the place. In place of the open bins where you could smell coffee beans, Starbucks switched to flavor-sealed bags. So there's those big, huge, ugly silver bags you see lining the top shelves of their stores. They switched to flavor-sealed bags, which made it much easier to store the roasted beans and ship them to a multitude of distant locations. By his own admission, he gave up what he believed in. He talked the talk. He had a vision and he went for it. But in the process of doing that, in the process of wanting more and more money, and I don't know what else, he gave that up. We're no different. We are no different. If you think about Christ, if you think about religion, if you think about God, a lot of us, we jump in and we have this vision and we have this thought or this plan of where we want to be and what we want to be and what our relationship with Christ is going to look like. And for some of us, it goes really good for about 2 or 3 weeks. And then at some point, we just stop and we just give it up. And we don't know how or we don't know why. We can't pinpoint a date in which we did it. But all of a sudden, we're doing something completely different. And all of a sudden, this vision and this thing that was so important to us has completely changed. Last week, we started talking about walking the walk. Tonight, I want to continue, and I want to start with the thought that there has to be a decision, there has to be a connection between the way we think and the way that we act. The way we think and the way that we act. If you want it to rhyme, the way we talk has to match the way we walk. Like Dr. Seuss, right there. But in all seriousness, we do. There has to be a connection because a lot of us, we think one way, but the way we walk and the way we live out our faith is totally different. And I want to try to get at why that is tonight. We're going to start in Luke 9, verses 57 through 62. I'll be reading from the English Standard Version. Follow along. As they were going along the road, this is Jesus and his gang, someone said to him, "I will follow you wherever you go." That's a pretty bold claim to make to Jesus, right? Jesus is walking, and you see him, and he doesn't go up and say, "Hey, my name's John. I've seen what you've done. That lady was dead, and you made her alive, and I like that. I'd like to follow you and become part of your cohort." No, he just says, "I will follow you wherever you go. I will follow you wherever you go." And Jesus said to him, "Foxes have holes, and birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head." That guy was probably like, "What? What's that mean? What does it even mean? Foxes, birds, air, Son of Man." A lot of us are like this. We're like this man. We just jump in. All right? Some of you are like that. If you see something you like, you jump in. It doesn't matter what it is. You just jump in. It doesn't matter the risk. It doesn't matter the cost. If you like it, you jump in. That is me. If I want something, I will go get it. I won't save for it. I will just go buy it. It doesn't matter. And then I'll get yelled at.